Everybody, welcome to a very exciting special edition of the Big Red Bus as we take the glorious monstrosity out onto the snowy streets of Chicago. It's a dark, dark evening here as the beloved Bulls have taken a dark, dark turn. On my ride with me is my co-pilot, the great one, Doug Tonis. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. I'm surprised the bus was described as glorious today. I'm also amused that during our countdown to start recording, you count us down so we all hit record at the same time. And then you just start shuffling papers and you're like, all right, hold on 1 second, let me go. Like why did we even bother having the countdown? If you're just going to just have a bunch of mess
So we start the recording
at the
same time.
You could just move the tracks around, right? You don't actually
Doug,
need them
you're
to sing.
ruining the vision. You're ruining the vision for the listeners because this is supposed to be a bus and now you're making it sound like we're doing it from a desk. I don't like that. I want them to think we're actually taking a bus out. And as I turn around in the back of the bus, the last row, just like Waldo in the Hot for a Teacher Van Halen video, who do I see but our good friend, our mutual friend, Mount Makoa from Australia. It's Mark K. from Australia. How you doing, my friend?
Yeah, great.
Come on up. Come up to the second row. How's it going?
I like to keep my distance, social distancing, but I'm well. How are you?
I've been better, Mark. I got to be honest with you. I want Troy Brown Jr. cut after this game. What kind of dope steps out of bounds twice in a game? It shouldn't happen once. It happened in the first half, and then just for good measure, he steps out of bounds again in the second half. Two of the dumbest turnovers that you can possibly have. Why is this guy still on the freaking roster? This guy sucks. He's allegedly, what a pickup. What a pickup. He's a great point of attack defender. He sucks. He's not a good point of attack defender. Takes him a half an hour to get around a pick. He sucks. And this is a perfect opportunity for him to come up and step up big, and he sucked. I don't know what he did all last summer, but his three-point percentage now is an all-time low, 31%. I want him off my roster. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, the Bulls definitely lost that game because of Troy Brown Jr. That is definitely what happened here. That's why they lost.
He didn't help.
What say you, Doug?
Doug?
I say I don't know why Fred has these long-ass rants about guys that would not be in the rotation if six guys weren't injured. Like what if Alfonso McKinney played in a ton of minutes instead, things would have just gone spectacularly. There's just a dude on the street that's going to come in and do better than Troy Brown Jr. I mean, look, just to remove the idiocy from this for a second, you're not going to release him because you might need him to match salaries in a trade. So you're not going to just cut him to get another guy who sucks that's on the street now. After a first 100 guys that were on the street got added to rosters for COVID, we're not going to find the 101st best player that's not in the NBA and think he's better than Troy Brown Jr.
All right, let's just stop there for a second. Nobody in the fan base was waxing poetic about Alfonso. All I had to do was hear about how great Troy Brown Jr. was.
From who?
What a steal it was.
From who?
Oh, come on. So I just saw Salim just sent in a question to your Bulls HQ show, Mark, about, has he played his way into tradable status? That's all I ever heard last year. What a great pickup. We got him for Gafford.
Is there not enough
sucks.
stuff to rant about that, you're inventing
Well,
these
I'm starting
random,
with that. I got a long
straw
list.
man arguments.
Imagine
cares
picking Troy
about
Brown
Troy
Jr.
Brown
over
Jr.
Grayson Allen. We should be ranting about Grayson Allen right now, but instead Fred's ranting about Troy Brown Jr.
Well, Troy Brown Jr. is a part of it.
Point guard
What's
on this
that
show?
doofus?
What are they even doing? We're talking about Troy Brown Jr.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm gonna
man.
go into a Jim
that's
Moore
part of it.
playoffs rant soon.
Who's the guy whose the biggest fault was it after that ridiculous play with Allen happens? Who's standing right there and does nothing? It's Troy Brown Jr. So, yes, he's raised my ire starting with that play and his overall crappy play for the last year and a half since we acquired
Fantastic.
him. I want him off the roster.
Yet again, you're pissed off about the 12th man on the roster and want to rant about it.
He's not the 12th man. That's the whole point.
Well, he is. He
I
is if
hear
everyone's
people waxing
healthy.
poetic about him.
He is if everyone's healthy.
All right, go on. Where are we at? I'm so pissed off to start the show already. Let's go over to Mark. Mark, why don't you just expound on your tweet again where you're yelling at people who are sick of Vucevic. Let's get this straight. So justify it again. I'm trying to figure out what your whole point is here.
Well, I didn't think I was yelling at anyone. I'm not even sure what tweet you're referencing because I don't yell at people. What are you talking about?
I'm talking about your tweet about, hey, it was a good move to trade for Vucevic. In a night he's going 4 of 18.
Well, are you off the Vucevic bandwagon again?
Sounds like it.
I mean, like now you think it's a bad trade again?
After tonight.
I mean, like I just want to be sure, like which of your flip-flopping days that we're on. We're now on the Vucevic was a bad idea. Because I think I'm the only one I know that has consistently said this was a bad trade. Even when he had 4 good games in a row, I said I still wouldn't have made this trade. And you were there going like, oh, he's back. So
I think I've done an incredible job of straddling both points.
Not called out about
it
at all.
Played.
No, it's horrendous. No one even noticed.
All right. So, Mark, you don't know the tweet I'm referring to where you had this. You got up on the soapbox and started talking about how, hey, it was still a good trade for whatever reason. Could you explain yourself a little bit better? Because I don't understand your general point of this thing. Why is Doug Tonis wrong in his anger about that trade?
Well, I do know exactly what tweet you're referring to. I just pushed back on it because I wasn't yelling at anyone. I was just making a fairly reasonable point, but for whatever reason, you've interpreted that as me yelling at you for some reason. All I said was that as part of the Vooch trade, which the reason I was talking about the Vooch trade is because on my timeline, because Vooch was having a bad game, everyone was bringing up the fact that the Vooch trade was bad and all this sort of stuff. But the point I was effectively making here is one of the points, or one of the reasons why the Vooch trade was made was in part to keep Zach LaVine around, to keep him happy, given that he's an unrestricted free agent this offseason. And that's a point that seemingly gets lost for some reason. Everyone just routinely points to, you don't get Vooch with DeMar, which you can, argue back and forth about. But if you don't, the point I was trying to make was if you don't trade for Vooch, then... And maybe you don't get DeMar or whatever the situation is this offseason, the one that just went past. Are we confident that Zach stays if you keep Wendell Carter Jr. picks and maybe don't really sign someone else or sign other veterans and you continue going down the younger road? That was all the point I was making. I don't know why you've interpreted that as me yelling at people, but you obviously have.
Well, let me just step in for a second and just say, like, one, it's fine to make those points. I didn't interpret them as yelling or whatever. But DeMar was going to come here anyway. We offered him $70 million more than the next best team. No one was turning that down. He wasn't going to the Clippers for $5 million a year. It just wasn't. Like, it's just crazy that people think this. Like, I'm sure he likes Vooch. I'm sure he's happy he's on the team. And then in terms of Zach staying next year, he'll stay if the team is good, and he'll leave if the team is bad. So for Vooch to have value in that, he has to be good. And, we've played the Orlando Magic 3 times, right? And if you look at the 2 guys we gave up for Vucevic, and, like, out of 5 of those 6 performances from those 2 guys were better than Vooch in the same game. Like, Wendell Carter Jr. has been better than Vucevic every time they matched up. Every single time.
He embarrassed him.
Every single time. And Franz Wagner's been better than Vucevic in 2 of those 3 games and was about the same in the 3rd. So, like, I'm not convinced that this team right now is better today with Vucevic on it. And if it's not, then clearly, like, the team would be better off in terms of keeping Zach LaVine by being better if the guys we traded for Vooch are better than Vooch. Not to mention it would give us a lot more assets to have done other things in the trade market because we wouldn't be so restricted on our picks. So, and I'm done arguing about Vooch. It is what it is. Like I've said, I don't like the trade. I would take it back. I mean, that's still true. Nothing's changed my mind on that. But, we can't do anything with him except hope he plays his best, put him in position to succeed. That's where we are right now, regardless of what happened in the past. That's where we are right now. Is like, hey, I hope he plays really well. I hope we find a way to make this work. It's not like he's like just worthless. He does good things at times too. I don't think he's just like a bottom 200 player or something. I mean, he's like a top 150 player, but he's nowhere near the player we hoped he would be.
Yeah, and so to follow up on that point, Mark, your tweet, and I quote, ignoring whether certain free agents choose Chicago without the Vooch trade, as Doug correctly stated. I keep on hearing this point. I just want to throw a desk out a window. Yes, he would have come here. For that type of money, he would have signed here with Zach LaVine already here. It wasn't because of Vucevic that he came here. It was because of Zach LaVine.
And Lonzo Ball was here.
Let's go back to your tweet. And Lonzo Ball was already here. And Lonzo Ball would have come here without, like, where's the evidence that Lonzo and DeMar DeRozan were just, like, dying to play with Vucevic? There was none. So let's go back to your tweet. I refuse to believe the alternative, keeping Wendell Carter Jr. in picks, was the better solution. Like, hey, I didn't believe that either. But I don't know how you could stand here or sit here on the 22nd of whatever the date is, 23rd of January after that game and say, you know what? Yeah, that was the better solution. What are you talking about? We just watched a game where he went 4 of 18. He sucked for the vast majority of the season. Yeah, he had a nice stretch and he does some good things and set some picks and rebounds. So does Wendell Carter Jr. So do the other assets that they got in that team, Franzi. I mean, come on, man. What are we going to do? We're just going to sit here and admit and act like, you know what, it was the right thing. No, it wasn't. Wake the hell up. It wasn't the right thing. It wasn't the right thing to trade Gafford. Let's stop acting like this.
Will it be the right thing if Vucevic has 4 good games in a row? That's what it took you last time.
So
to which, at the time when you said that, I pointed out to you, you said it was going to take 2 months for you to believe in Vuce again. And after 4 games... Do we have
to go back to my tweet?
What's that?
No. There's a very a tweet that Mark liked to make fun of me about, which I stand by to this day. I can't recall exactly what it said, but it was something to the effect of, yeah, he's going to have to do a little bit more than a couple good weeks of basketball, right?
Yeah, and then you came on our show, and after 4 games, you were all on the Vooch bandwagon and said he's going to be this good for the rest of the year, and you were back on keeping Vooch.
You also said Franz Wagner was a bust at the draft, so that was
Mo Wagner was.
That was another thing you said.
All right, so we got Alex Caruso out for 8 weeks. We got Lonzo Ball out for 8 weeks. And we're arguing about Troy Brown Jr. not playing well enough as the 12th man, and
this is what happens when
going back to the Vucevic
I'm the point
trade
right here. Let's take it back. Now let me take back the.
I mean, there might be other news. I'm just saying.
I want to go into the Allen play because we haven't had comments on that yet. Let's talk about the Allen play, which was obviously a season-changing play. There's going to be 2 parts to this question. Number 1, I'd like your thoughts on that. Please share it for the audience. But number 2. Does the injury to Caruso change your opinion on whether or not the Bulls should make a move for a legitimate power forward? Let's start out with you, Doug Tonis.
Well, I already forgot the first of your questions because I was focused on the second of them.
What's your
thoughts? I got a short
play?
attention span. I mean,
your thoughts on the play.
I mean, what thoughts are there? It was a dirty play. It's a Grayson Allen. He's a dirty player. I mean, I don't think Grayson Allen went up there and was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to hurt Alex Caruso. But he absolutely went up there and was like, I'm gonna mess this stuff up, and I don't care if someone gets hurt. I'm gonna do something that is dangerous, and whatever. The consequences of that don't matter to me. And the Bucks came out and supported him, which makes sense. If it was our guy who did something, you'd expect our guys to say the same thing. The weird Twitter fiasco where they had the scheduled tweet, allegedly. With Grayson Allen for the game day tweet, and then didn't take it down. Actually blocked NBA Shy Bulls because they mocked them, and got mocked by 1 million people. Then eventually deleted the tweet 2 hours later, but never apologized. But acted and
acted like it was pre-scheduled.
Yeah, which I'm sure I believe that. But then just say, hey, all you had to do is say, I apologize for pre-scheduling this tweet. We did not mean to rub anything in that Alex Caruso got hurt. We obviously hope he comes back as soon as possible, and never like to see a player hurt.
Why do you automatically believe that?
There's no reason not to. I mean, I don't know. Have you ever?
Yeah, sure there is.
All right. Well, anyway.
Sure there is.
Fine. I don't.
What are you talking about?
I take people at their word. It's a reasonable story. I'm sure they schedule stuff like that, so it doesn't surprise me. But regardless, they clearly didn't apologize.
What a coincidence.
It doesn't even matter because they would need to have apologized and show remorse, just like Grayson Allen would have needed to show some remorse, and he didn't. So, screw that guy. I kind of feel like with these times where guys get injured on flagrant twos, I posted this on Twitter, the league should review them, and they should have the option to suspend guys for as long as the injured player is out. Like you have to actually respect player safety more than this. And if they look at a play and they say, this was a flagrant two, it was intentional, and it was, reckless, then suspend the guy for as long as the guy's out. It's just and especially you should look at remorse too. Like Allen didn't check on him, smirking on the bench, being just whatever. If you went into court for a criminal trial and you showed no remorse, your sentence would be way worse. So that should also factor in. But regardless of that, they're not going to do that now. I mean, that would be a rule change they would need to bring up. So, Grayson Allen got one game, and I think that's appropriate under the current rules, and is fine. And in terms of the trade deadline, I think it makes it a little bit more likely we make a trade if a trade is to be made for just Patrick Williams and Derek Jones Jr. If that trade is on the table, where it's those two guys for Harrison Barnes and maybe the Portland pick, or Jeremy Grant, then I think that trade is more likely to be made now because you need an extra really highly skilled player, and both those guys you'd be giving up are not on the court. So it's just like adding a near all-star while giving up nothing. And, while you're going to need to keep your head above water for the next 2 months without two of your guards, it would help to get another really valuable player in. What it makes less likely is that the Bulls trade Kobe because you can't afford to give up that guard depth right now, and you're probably not going to trade Kobe to bring in a different guard. So with that being said like that, Kobe probably now sticks. So if there is a deal for Grant, which I think is more likely than Barnes, if there's a deal for Grant based on Patrick Williams and Derek Jones Jr., I think that deal is a little bit more likely today than it was before the injuries.
What say you, Mark?
Yeah, see, I disagree. In terms of making a deal to go grab a power forward that helps you win now, I think they're less inclined to do it based on what's going on around them. Maybe without the Caruso thing, maybe that would have been different. But to lose Lonzo, to lose Caruso, your two best defensive players for at least, let's call it 6 weeks, probably longer. I think it really does change the season, and look, maybe this changes somehow based on if they go on a run here. Once Zach and Javonte are reportedly meant to or potentially come back tomorrow. If that happens, then maybe they go on a run here because the schedule's pretty light. Maybe maybe they keep thinking that way in terms of trading for a win now guy. But if you're going to be out with Lonzo and Caruso for a while, obviously Derek Jones Jr. is still hurt, Pat's hurt, obviously. There's a lot of guys out at the moment, I guess is my point. So, I think it does matter because if those guys come back or have a setback or come back and don't look the same, and you're cashing in a younger player like Patrick Williams,
but these aren't injuries that are like that.
Well,
meniscus is a pretty safe recovery.
A wrist,
is also. I mean, these guys are scheduled to come back in like mid-March, somewhere between early March and mid-March.
Yeah,
it's. I mean, there's still like a month of the season left, depending how things happen. But there's still potentially a full month of the season left when they come back. Like it's not like they're going to be. I've not even touched a basketball for a day, and then the playoffs start. I mean, you've got time to build that back up again.
But what you don't have necessarily time for is if with them being out is if for whatever reason you plummet from the number 1 seed down to 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, something like that, which is that's certainly in play. Then that changes your season. You no longer have home court. You may be going up against a Milwaukee or a Brooklyn in round 1. Whereas if you're the top seed and you're trading a Pat and Derek Jones Jr. to cement your place as a number 1 season, like that's a very different scenario than trying to hang on to a playoff spot and avoiding the play-in, which is in play at the moment. Like the Bulls are like 1 or 2 games out of being in the top 6 in the East at the moment, so it's pretty precarious at the moment. So if they lose a bunch of games here heading towards the deadline with all these injuries, then I think they're more inclined to keep the pieces in place.
Yeah, I don't think that's likely though. I just don't think they're going to fall off a cliff. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
I'm almost embarrassed to admit this, but I do agree with Mark, Doug. I don't agree with you. I think there was a long shot, just beyond a long shot, that the Bulls were ever going. This front office was ever going to trade Patrick Williams for anything, and that seems to be echoed by Casey Johnson and everyone in the know that he was never ever going to be traded. They were wedded to him. He's their number 4 pick overall. He was handed playing time last year. I frankly didn't think he deserved. He has a tremendous amount of potential, tremendous amount of physical skills.
I don't think either of those things are true.
That he has a tremendous amount of potential or physical skills?
Yeah, I don't think either of those things are true.
Okay. Regardless, I'll disagree with you on that point. I do think he has a lot of potential.
Tremendous amount of potential? And tremendous physical skills.
Semantics right now.
That's fine. I think
he has very good physical skills.
When discussing how he's going to be, like that's a pretty important distinction between someone who has tremendous potential. Scotty Barnes looks like he has tremendous potential. Patrick Williams looks like he has less potential than Franz Wagner.
This front office is a big believer in the skills of Patrick Williams. I don't think there's anything that indicates they've changed on that opinion. So I don't. The
front office is pretty opaque. Just to be fair, like they seem pretty opaque. Like, so who knows? I'm I agree. There's been nothing that makes you say, wow, this front office looks like they're going to go trade Patrick Williams. But I don't think there's a whole lot that this front office projects about what their inner workings of their plans are. Like, I don't think they're going out there, like, trumpeting what they're going to do. So the fact that they've not said, like, we're leaning towards trading Patrick Williams, like, I don't think if they do trade him, I think it would still look like this. Let me rephrase it that way. I think there's a very good chance you're right that they don't want to trade him. But if they did want to trade him, I don't think it would look any different at this point in time.
When he hurt his wrist, the fact that they said he's out for the year, basically, or said he won't be back in the second half of the year, said everything to me. Because to me, that just makes me think. That made me think like, well, he's in here for the long haul because they don't even want to rush him back. I mean, I've never heard of a wrist injury in the first week of the season where somebody would be out the entire year. It's never happened in the history of basketball, as far as I know. So, their reaction to that injury was, I found, bewildering, and the only way I could explain it is that they don't want to put pressure on him to come back and just give him the time that he needs. And they're willing to, make their bed with Patrick Williams. And that's fine, right? Some of it, you and Mark might be unhappy about that. I'd say the vast majority of fans are happy with it. I'm probably somewhere in the middle. But I don't think they're wedded to Kobe White. I think they trade him in a minute, especially with the way Iowa's played.
Well, they're going to trade him now.
Until recently.
Kobe's here now.
What's that?
They're not going to trade him now. Not now that they're missing two guards for the next 8 weeks.
Well, no.
You want to see Troy Brown Jr. play him 45 minutes a night?
If Zach comes back tomorrow, it'll be less of a problem, right?
But it'll still be a problem. It'll still be a big problem.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not about trading Kobe White either. Out of the two players, I'd trade Williams ahead of White, but I think I'm in a minority on that feeling.
Well, you got
Mark.
Me.
Well, let me go back to this one thing about. I want to comment on the Allen play. I am so sick. If I hear another person from our era or a player from that late 80s or early 90s tell me about that was a hard foul in that era, that's a bunch of bullcrap. It's a bunch of bullcrap. Yes, I highlighted a play where Jordan went up, very similar to that, against the Pistons, and what was the result? Yeah, it happened probably with more frequency, but what was the result of a play like that? There would have been a massive fight, and that's exactly what happened, where Charles Oakley jumped on, I can't remember who it was that took out Jordan in that play. It was Rick Mahorn. And the next thing you know, Doug Collins is getting thrown over the scores table. So, yes, the ramifications would have been a little bit more than, Troy Brown Jr. going over and bending over. Are you okay? So, yeah, it happened with more frequency then. But the idea that it was just a hard foul is asinine. And if I hear it again one more time, I'm going to lose my mind. Go on. Mark, did you have any comments?
What am I commenting on?
We don't even know at this point. Fred's off the rails.
Oh man,
we should have recorded this as a Bulls beat. Let me lead.
We should have.
We wouldn't have wasted 10 minutes on Troy Brown Jr. I can tell you that.
I'm not gonna stand for besmirching of my point guard ability.
I mean, a good point guard would control the players around him, but we're off the rails.
You're the Devin Dotson of point guards, Fred.
One might even say the Troy Brown Jr. point guard.
The Ryan Archier, not in the NBA. Let's talk a little bit about these injuries now. In the interim since our last show, obviously, Ball went out. Zach LaVine went out. Caruso's going to be out now. Which one of these three injuries do you think is most detrimental for the future of this team? Let's start out with you on this one, Mark K. from Australia, Mount Makoa.
Yeah, I would say Caruso. Alonzo's obviously a very good player, but Caruso's just a better defensive player, and I think he's a more malleable player in terms of the type of players he can defend. Like we saw him guarding Giannis on possessions against the Bucks, even after he hurt his wrist. So he's probably more irreplaceable than Alonzo, to be fair. I think he's the better player. All the advanced numbers suggest that he's the most impactful ball this season. So. Followed closely by Javonte Green. So in that regard, they're really going to miss Caruso, and there's no way to really replace him.
Well, Javonte Green's coming back, so apparently there is a way to replace him.
Everything
based on these advanced stats that Javonte Green is similarly calibrated in. I agree with Mark though. I think Caruso is the more difficult to replace, but they're pretty similar players. But Caruso is a little bit more disruptive in his defense. Alonzo is a little bit more fundamental. And, yeah, Alonzo gives you more shooting. But once Zach comes back, which hopefully will be tomorrow, but if not, probably the game after, once Zach comes back, you probably can live without Lonzo shooting a little better than you can live without Caruso's ability defensively.
Considering the extended absence of Caruso and Ball, even Derek Jones Jr., Zach's going to hopefully be coming back soon. Green's going to be coming back soon. But, some obviously those key players that were central to your point of attack defense. What do you realistically expect the Bulls to be when the season is over now? Is it not realistic at all to be a top 3 team? We'll start out with you on this one, Doug.
I think it's very realistic they can be a top 3 team. I mean, they're right now they're tied for third. They're 1 game back of first. It's going to be tough for them, but they've been missing guys all year, and they've still maintained this position they're at despite missing tons of guys all year. And while they were missing Zach, Lonzo, Green, Caruso, and Derek Jones Jr. and Pat Williams, if we want to count him, that's a lot. But once you get 2 of those guys back, that eases the burden tremendously on everyone else, especially when one of those guys is Zach LaVine. So I think they've got a nice stretch of pretty winnable games coming up. I think they'll probably do pretty well over that stretch. And yeah, it's not pretty, but in this season where guys are just dropping like flies, like I'm not convinced that any of these other teams are going to stay really healthy and everything's going to go great for them the rest of the way either. So we'll just see how it goes. But the Bulls could definitely finish in the top 4, could definitely finish as high as 1 even still. I'm not saying I predict it, but they're definitely not out of it. Like, I think you guys are catastrophizing a little bit. You're going to get an all-star back in another game, and you're going to run through, like, the next 9 games are probably winnable games for the most part.
What say you, Mark?
Well, I mean, at the moment, the Bulls are third, but there's 2 games separating the Bulls and the Sixers, who are in 6th. And they're 2.5 games back from the Hornets, who are in 7th. So I take your point that the schedule over the next couple of weeks isn't tremendously difficult, but they just lost to the Magic. Yeah, you're getting Zach back, you're getting Javonte back, but you don't have your 2 best defensive players on the wing, Lonzo and Caruso. So I'm sure we'll talk about the schedule coming up, but they should be able to beat teams like Toronto, San Antonio, Portland. You play Orlando again, then you go the Raptors again. But I mean, they're not slam dunk games, I suppose, is my point. Even if Zach comes back, because this team's defensive identity has just been trending downward for basically a month now, and a lot of that was just due to the fact that you didn't have Caruso, and in some of those games you also didn't have Lonzo, and that's the reality the Bulls have now. They don't have both for the next 6 to 8 weeks at least. So I think their defense is going to be probably like bottom 10 at the moment, or over the next few weeks. And if the offense stalls for whatever reason because Vucevic hasn't got it together, or Io and Kobe are having a bad night, or one of DeMar or Zach doesn't necessarily have a good performance, then there's a real chance here that the Bulls sort of go 500 through this easy stretch, quote unquote, and despite running up against teams that you would think they should ordinarily beat. So I don't think I am being glass half empty on this at the moment. I just think this is the reality of the situation, that they could easily slip from. We've seen them slip from 1 to 3, and I think they could easily slip from 3 to 6 or 7 right now.
And maybe
I have major concerns.
You use the word could. Like, I agree, they could.
Yeah,
and Fred used the phrase, "Could they still be a top 3 seed?" Do you think they can't be a top 3 seed?
I would think it's more likely than not that they're not going to be a top 3 seed.
But so they can.
I agree with that.
But they can.
Technically, yeah, they can. They can.
I mean, technically, like,
I should have phrased
let me rephrase
better.
it this way.
Like, what's more likely,
Doug? Is it like 10% chance at a top 3 seed in your mind? 5%? 25%? 30%? Like,
I would say 30-70 at the moment in terms of them.
Okay, yeah.
30%
I think
chance
that's
of them not being a top 3 team.
They're behind. They're third right now, Doug.
Yeah,
they're behind
I know.
the Heat and Nets. They're going to be behind the Bucks in a few days. The Cavs are 28-19. 76ers are 26-19. I think the Sixers are probably right now, with if they do anything to acquire more talent around Embiid, are probably going to pass them. I think there's a serious question they could fall to 6. I think it's entirely possible.
It wouldn't shock me if something like that happened. Like you guys point out, it's just super bunched up. It's just super bunched up. But I just feel like you look at, say, Zach and Green come back tomorrow. Your next games are Oklahoma City, Toronto, San Antonio, Portland, Orlando, Toronto, Indiana. And I think you're the favorite in all those games, even with Caruso.
Not Toronto.
I think you are. Even with Caruso and ball out. That doesn't mean you're going to win them all. You won't win them all. But like it's like these other teams are not like just amazing either. Like they're not just going on these huge winning streaks of winning all these games. All these teams also have their own various problems. So we'll see what happens. Like I'm probably with you. Like 30-70 seems fair for like a top 3 seed. You know, it's going to be tough. But I think there's when you get to the playoffs, maybe I'll rephrase it this way. If you're not the 1 seed or the 2 seed, I'm not sure how much the 3 seed helps you. You know, like right now the 3 seed is playing Philadelphia, who's pretty great, right? And you know, it's like maybe the Cavs are a team I would love to play, and maybe by the end of the season they fall to 6th or 7th. Like if I was going to have to pick one of these teams that's kind of in the top that I had to match up against, it'd probably be Cleveland, who's currently at number 5. But there's not going to be an easy out unless you're 1 or 2. You know, then you're going to draw like Charlotte or Toronto or Boston, and maybe even Toronto by the end of the year is maybe kind of solid. I don't know. I probably not.
Doug, I think we had talked about this after they beat Detroit, or maybe it was with you, Mark, when you and I did the show, the Bulls beat. After they beat Detroit, we were like, these next 6 games are going to be tough. They're going to be tough, and we'd be happy if they can go 3-3 in these games. They played the Nets, the Warriors, the Celtics, the Grizzlies, the Cavs, and the Bucks. They went 1-5. None of us were expecting that. Like we wanted a better record than 1-5. They went 1-5. After those 6 games, the schedule got much better now. That tonight, the Magic, the Thunder, the Raptors at home, at San Antonio, the Blazers, and the Magic at home. These 6 games, they better go 4-2. Like that's should be expected from a team that's top 3 in the East. And I have serious concerns they're going to be able to do that. They played at Orlando today. Now they got to fly across the country, go to Oklahoma City, play the Raptors at home, who are a tough team. Then they got to go at San Antonio, the Blazers at home, and Magic at home. I mean, if they don't go 3-3 over the 6-game stretch, yes, I think they're going to end up 6th or 7th by the time it's all said and done. I hope they don't, but I think that's likely.
Teams go through bad stretches. Like all those other teams that have worse records than us, they didn't get worse records because they were just kicking ass all year. So I don't know. Like I said, I could see it happening. Like it's all these teams are bunched up. Like I don't think any team in the top 8 should feel like, yeah, my place is secured. Nothing could go wrong here. You know, you kind of feel like the teams with just overall more talent are in good shape as long as they don't suffer injuries. But you know, it's close enough with everyone that like a little thing can just move any team. And the Bulls now have several little things to deal with, so it's going to be tough for them. But you know, I would not get so upset about it yet. You know, let's wait to see what happens.
I think also it goes back to they got really lucky when they beat Washington and they beat Indiana with those last-second shots. I mean, this could be even worse going back further, but it's not, right? They won those games, so you got to hand it to them for doing that. Regardless, let's talk about the team as currently constituted. Who do you think has been? Let's go to Vucevic again. What do we have to do to turn this guy around? Like, what is the situation? What can you possibly do to fix this issue, which has continued for the vast majority of the season? I'll start with you on this one, Doug.
I mean, invent a time machine. Be a good start. You know, I don't know what you can do. I mean, that's like I think when Zach LaVine is in the game, it helps a lot because Zach really looks to get Vucevic the ball in positions where Vuce can score. You know, Vuce, for whatever reason, has not been able to shoot the 3 well this year. And even though I hate post offense as a way to run your offense, you know, like looking for him on mismatches in the post is definitely good looks for him. You know, don't try and run him out against Embiid in there, but you know, when he gets like a 6'5" guy on him, you know, it's good to feed him down there. But I think maybe I just don't believe in him. I have never believed in him. So I'm not sure what you can do. Some guys, once their role has changed, just aren't as good. They put up numbers on bad teams, and when they're on good teams, they can't contribute in the same way. And Vucevic just might be such a guy.
Before I go over to you, Mark, let me just say, Doug, you're absolutely right. Took 8 shots tonight from the three-point line. He's 2 of 8. He's shooting a career low, I think, from the three-point line so far this season. It's got to stop. He's just not – he's killing us out at the three-point line. And all his shots are wide open. He's just not hitting at an acceptable percentage. I feel much better about Vucevic when he's in the post with a mismatch. He had a great move in the Milwaukee game against Giannis. I think he can do damage down there, and he's a good passer out of that position. Now, before I go over to you, Mark, I know you hate the post play. I know you think it's archaic, but it is a play that will be a staple of the Bulls' offense in the playoffs when the game slows down. What say you?
Yeah, I hate the post play. You were correct. I don't want to see Vooch post ups. And look, you were whining about this on Twitter today about like his free throw attempts over however many last games he is. But like the reality is like you get the ball to Vooch in the post, and it's not like he's going to draw fouls in there. Or anything like that. I think you can still play make with Vooch from the high elbow and use him as a face-up shooter. And you don't have to kick it down to the post for him to utilize his passing skills. And he just hasn't really been efficient at all in the post at all this season. Like you just look at his numbers. I'm more confident that he can hit a jumper than him scoring in the post over someone. Like, and how many times have we seen this season when they've kicked it into the post where there is a mismatch, and he's just passed it out for whatever reason. He just doesn't look confident in any form of his offense, whether it's his jumper or his post up. But to me, he looks more scared to post up smaller guys than he does of taking a jump shot. So I don't like the idea of post him. I would still be using him in pick and pop situations, and I would continue to do that and just hope and pray that his jump shot comes around again.
Well, I will agree with that he's had a lot of questionable plays passing out of the post where he's had a mismatch, most notably at the end of the Milwaukee game where he had Holiday on him and he kicked it out for DeRozan to shoot a three. I don't understand why he does that, and I think maybe that's something the coaches should work with him on. But, again, I'd rather see him in the post against Holiday than out because he's not shooting the ball well. That's the whole purpose of him being out there is to pull out a big, and nobody's paying attention to him out there, Mark. I don't know, like, what else? How low does he have to get from three-point line for you to say, you know what, maybe we should go in the post with him? Because we're stuck with this guy. There's no other options there.
It's not necessarily an either-or, though, right? It's not like there's only two shots, post-ups and threes. And, Mark wasn't saying he should just shoot tons of threes. He's saying we should get him the ball in the elbow. I would say observationally, Vooch seems like he's best when they get him as the roll man or he comes off a screen and, like Zach or DeMar just draw two guys. And that option is there pretty frequently. And then they get him the ball moving towards the basket in the center of the court. And a lot of his assists to the corner are off that action, and a lot of his shots at the basket that have been successful are off that action. And, obviously teams can shut that down. It's not like they're just going to leave him open there all the time. But I think that's the type of action where you're seeing good looks for him. Like, I agree. Like, I don't know that you're getting, like, really good looks in the post either. So, and I don't think a guy who's struggling is a guy you want to be like, hey, let's run an isolation for this guy over and over again. If you get him on the mismatch, yeah, I agree. Let's throw it into him. But, like, otherwise, like, I don't think you need to just run ISOs for Vooch. Just get him on the move when you can. Just tone down his total number of shots. Just don't have him take as many shots. And let other guys get more shots up.
Yeah.
What do you guys think, Bill? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if anything, I'm making him less of a focal point and trying to just use him as a role guy, as much as it's painful to say, given that he was an all-star last season. But I think you're actually going to amplify the pressure that he's probably already feeling by, to Doug's point, isolating or continuing to isolate him, which a post play is effectively an isolation play. Just continue using him as a role guy and limit his shots. Maybe try to get him down to 12 to 14 shots at most. Make them high-quality shots. And like I said, hopefully he bounces back and his efficiency ticks up from that point. But like tonight where he's got 19 attempts and, granted maybe he has to have 19 attempts when you're playing the Magic and you don't have, Levine, Caruso and Lonzo. But I guess my point is, let's see what he can do when he's less of a focal point and there's less pressure on him, and you just use him as a pick and pop option or something like that, and just get him good, decent looks and try to take the pressure off him and let Zach and DeMar do more, and maybe Vooch can just bob up as that third guy, as that role playing type big. I don't know. Maybe try to do that rather than encouraging more post touches, because the thing that annoys me about post play is it takes time to get that thing organized, and it takes time to set up a post play. It takes time to make anything out of the post. So not only are you eating clock and potentially wasting time on the clock, if Vooch can't get anything going on in the post, then it sort of just builds pressure for the rest of the team to create something in the half court situation there. So I just don't like post play more generally, particularly when your post up option isn't an efficient one, and Vuce hasn't been a good efficient post up player this season.
So Billy Donovan's working with a roster right now with probably 4 guys in a rotation who really should be in the G League, and McKinney, Hill, I'd argue Thomas, Cook. I mean, it's just unbelievable what he's had to work with in the last couple of weeks. That said, Troy Brown Jr., yeah, well, he should be in some other league. That said, what do you think of Billy's job? I mean, what do you think of the job he's done over the past few weeks? What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? We'll start out with you, Mark, on this one.
Well, I'm very interested to see how he handles Josh Giddey tomorrow night, and I think that's going to be pretty key to how I answer this question, to be honest with you, whether he puts Io on Giddey and lets the two go at it. That's going to tell me a lot about Billy's mentality, I think, but more seriously, I think he's coaching fine. Like, he's doing the best he possibly can with what he's got available to him, and given that literally his roster is changing every other game, whether it's because of COVID, whether it's because a guy comes back from injury like Caruso does, and then gets hurt like a couple games later, or whatever the situation is. He's got his entire rotation is changing virtually game to game, and when you're changing your rotation every single game, I'm just not going to be too disappointed in the coaching or as to whatever the situation is. Like you sort of said, like, he's relying on guys that he wouldn't normally rely on, at least like a team that we would hope to be seeing as a good playoff team. There's no reason like half of these guys should be playing at the moment. So I'm not going to be critical of any move he makes at this point of the season. And to be fair, he hasn't really done anything that requires criticism anyway. So to me, Billy's perfectly fine. I think he's been a fantastic coach this season, and it's just the same as well. Like, if we're talking about the Bulls just sort of falling off here and the potential of that, like, Billy was a potential coach of the year candidate. Now, if they slide from number one, where had they finished this the season as a number 1 seed, he would have had a real chance at winning coach of the year. To now where they're falling to 3rd, maybe they continue to slide down to 5 or 6, something like that. And there's I guess my point is the flow on effects or the ramifications of what's happened here with all these injuries. It affects us in a million different ways, and obviously this is just a small thing, but maybe it's cost Billy a chance at a Coach of the Year award.
What say you, Doug?
I don't know. I think he's been great. And we talked about it as a Coach of the Year candidate. I don't think anything has changed. When a guy is out there coaching with just a crap roster, like, what do you want? Like, what more do you want out of him? Like, you just can't do anything when half your team is out. The Bulls are missing 6 guys who would be rotation players right now, or replacements for the guy who would be the rotation player who is already out. Like, just take 6 guys and any team's top 10 off their team, and how good is that team? And the Bulls have been like that for a pretty good chunk of the year. And they've still been fantastic for the most part this year. So, I think Billy Donovan's done a great job. And yeah, nothing else really to say about it.
I agree, too. The only move I would possibly make now is I still don't understand why Tony Bradley has kind of been relegated to doghouse status. He had a terrible game tonight, but almost every advanced metric, his lineups have been doing pretty well. Our rim defense is so bad and so awful at this point for the last 10 games. It's just like, to me, he's the one guy I feel that somewhat okay as far as protecting the rim, and he should be out there more often. But that's it. That's my only beef. I have nothing else to say. Oh, that, and also Troy Brown Jr.'s continued play. He played 30 minutes tonight. That's inexcusable. But I guess who else are you going to play? I'd probably start with an assistant or maybe somebody in the stands. But besides that, I don't know what other options you have. I'm not happy about it. And you guys want anything to add? Because I'm going to go now at this point. It's 40 minutes in. We've talked enough. Anything else you guys want to bring up?
I was trying to bait you into an Io versus Giddey thing, but you didn't really take it.
He just dropped it. He's just too depressed.
There's no reason to even talk about it. I mean, what's going to happen. I was going to dominate him. He's a better defender. I think by now most people realize he's a better player. I don't have to go find that poll. Where's that poll I had recently, which was one of my great days. How about that other stat too? Io was like number 1 in passes created. I can't remember what the specific stat was, and I just love sending those out with I'm just giddy about this. It's those are really good tweets, high quality tweets.
Can I ask you this? If Josh Giddey had back games where he was averaging 6 points per game and shooting like 25%, like Aya has over the last 2 games, what would your reaction be?
That for weeks.
Well, that's not true.
Giddey's had that.
That's definitely not true.
Did you see his game yesterday?
Well, that's my point. You're quick to point out when he has a bad game, but you're very quiet about when Aya has a bad game, and he's been quite bad the last 2 games.
Aya shot 40% today. It was 2 of 6. 2 of 6. And
2 of 6. It doesn't equal 40%.
Okay. Regardless,
it's 4 of 15.
It's been a long day. Let's go. Let's shut this. He held Suggs to 4-10 shooting. I thought he did a good job defensively today.
Oh.
For the most part, outside of that one play where DeRozan got destroyed. That was mostly though on. I can't remember who was the guy off the pick. It's Cook. There's not much to say. I mean, Iowa's the least of our problems. I think we can all agree with that, right?
Yes. I'm stirring you.
Surprise all year.
I'm stirring you, but I'm just saying that there's potential. Like, no matter how bad you feel today, like there's potential for it to be much worse if the Bulls lose to OKC tomorrow and Giddey has a good game. I'm just saying.
Let me just state this: I would not trade Josh Giddey for Io today.
Okay.
I would prefer to have Io than Josh Giddey. That's how confident I am that Io's a better player. What say you? Would you do that? Would you trade? Would you want Josh? I think I know the answer.
Yes.
But just for the audience's sake.
Yes.
So I could say this. Doug, what about you, Doug?
I think I would take Giddey over Io, but it's a lot closer than I feel like it should be.
Mark would like to believe. Yeah, of course. One guy was picked in the second round. The other guy was picked in the top 10.
Well, I mean, Io is better than a lot of guys picked in the first round, right? Like, it's not just
right.
Giddey. He's
almost all of them, especially Josh Giddey.
He's
why do you think Why do you think Giddey's better? His 28% three-point shooting. What do you think he does better in Io? Passing.
Just
passing.
Besides passing and being an offensive initiator.
Like, he's not an initiator.
Well,
SGA's the initiator.
Well, he averages 7 assists a game, but okay.
That kind of feels like someone who initiates some offense.
As a 19-year-old point guard, that's pretty good, I'd say.
I think Io's better. I don't know what else to tell you. We can continue to have a staring contest on this, but by the end of the year, I think I'll be staring you down. I'll burn a hole right in your forehead, Mark, because you know it's true deep down.
Whatever you say, Freddie. Whatever you say. I won't go too hard on you because you're in a bad place right now. But I'll save it for tomorrow potentially.
Oh, you want to hear my story? No, I don't even want to hear my story right now. I'm so angry. That's for the Bulls beat. Yeah. All right, let's bring the bus in. It's the last.
This is the worst podcast ever. It really is like the worst podcast.
That's saying a lot too, because we've
had some pretty bad shows, but this one stands out in my mind.
There were some good moments.
I don't know if I remember any.
Enough good moments. I think it will be well received by the fan base. At least I hope so. And give us a 5-star rating on iTunes and wherever else you listen to podcasts.
I don't know if we should ask for the rating today.
No.
Maybe you're right.
We should don't rate us next time.
Until next time. What's our tagline? I can't always forget it.
So are we going to cut that? We should cut the whole thing.
St. Bulls. Oh, yeah, we should just cut the whole pod. All right, my friends. Godspeed and good night.